Hello, everyone. It is Irene here, Irene Lyon. It is the 5th of March. It's the year 2022. And I'm here on this Saturday to talk about SmartBody SmartMind and answer some questions that we have had submitted via email and just do an overview, really, of SmartBody SmartMind, what it is, what you get. And so while I wait for folks to get on, I'm just going to make sure everything's going well here. And if you are here with me today, drop a comment, say hello, tell me where you are in the world. And also, are you already a student of mine? Are you an alum? Have you done drop-in class? Have you read some of my articles, watched some of the videos here on YouTube? Have you already joined SmartBody SmartMind for this year? Maybe you're an alumni. Just let me know, and I will get into the chat box today, obviously. And I have Diana, one of our staff, helping with links today. So she'll be in here magically posting things that I mention, videos, articles, et cetera, et cetera. So before I get started, I'm going to have a little sip of tea and make sure all systems are a go. All right, cool. So thank you for everyone giving me thumbs up. Looks like we're getting people in here slowly. And hello, Sarah. Hello, Alana. Hello, Vincent. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to do a very quick overview, and then I'll get into the questions. And yes, it is very sunny here in Vancouver. I don't know if you can hear, but around this time on a weekend when it's sunny, all the planes, the float planes, just start crossing all over. So if you hear something like that, that is what that is. All right. Hey, Gloria, you are a 21-day member and an SBSM member. Lovely to have you here. And for those that are here who are alum, feel free to write your experience, what you've learned in SmartBody SmartMind. The first thing I'm going to say about SmartBody SmartMind, while it is a 12-week program, so we're in live together for 12 weeks, it is a lifestyle in that you have access to the content as long as our internet stays alive and you have a computer and you can download all the information. So the reason I want to say that is because one of the common questions we get goes something like this: I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish all the content in 12 weeks. Do not worry. I would say that the bulk of our membership do not get through the full course curriculum in the 12-week period. And that is because we need to go at our own pace. We need to take our time. Life happens. We have kids, we have work, we have obligations. But the key is that you just do little bits at a time. Many of our alumni have been with us since the beginning, and this is the 11th time we've run SmartBody SmartMind. So just to give you an idea, while we're in session for 12 weeks, your membership has you or gives you the opportunity to come back and do the program with us again each year live. And the content, the lessons, the training calls, the Q&As, and I'll break down what those are in a second. All of that is yours to continue to work with after the 12 weeks. All right. So one other thing I'm going to mention about SmartBody SmartMind, kind of as a general, is in addition to lifetime membership, you also have the capacity to come back free of charge. So I'm going to be very clear. When you become a member, you can come back free of charge, attend the live training calls, ask questions in our forum. If I improve, add a whole module, add bonuses, all of the additions, all of the improvements, all of the tweaks are yours as a member. So we do not charge you guys extra when I add things. So for instance, this year, we're adding a few more lessons. I've added a training call. We've added some new bonus movement lessons that have been refreshed. So there's just more there for you to continue to learn and basically integrate and apply the existing knowledge that you have further. General speaking, live calls. So there are live calls within SmartBody SmartMind. These calls are live on Zoom, not on YouTube here. They're on Zoom, so it's only for members. All live calls are recorded. All live calls are transcribed. And all of these recordings and everything lives on our program website. So again, when you are a member, what happens is you go through the curriculum, and I'll talk about the curriculum in a second, and you have access to these live calls. Now, the cool thing about these live calls is that it doesn't matter if you cannot make them live, even though they're live, because we have people all around the world. So like right now, for example, some of you might be in Australia because it's that time of day where you're awake. Most of our Aussies, they take in the recordings. And that's just how it works. On my live calls, on my live training calls, I'm not answering questions. It's lecture style. We go through handouts, and I've actually got them right here. I was going to show you guys them. So there are these handouts that I use for each training call. There are 9 lectures with me. You work through these handouts. They are fill in the blank, such that you are actively engaged with writing, learning, listening to the information, the lectures. So that is one of the ways that I interact with you guys when we are in the live session. The other live real-time element to the course are the curated Q&A calls. So what does that mean? Curated means that if you have a question specific to your experience in the program while we're in the 12 weeks, you submit a question via a survey form. All of this is really self-explanatory when you're in the course. And we choose a selection, we curate the questions such that when you are in the call, we will answer the questions that were chosen. Now, the reason why is because a lot of the questions, the reason why we curate them, I should say, is because a lot of the questions are the same, or they have a similar theme. And so what we're going to do this year is we're going to curate questions so that we give a variety of answers to many people. Now, I just got distracted. I don't know if you guys noticed that. There was a little defensive orienting response. Someone's on a roof over there who normally isn't on a roof. So it was like there was this blue thing coming towards my eyes, and it looks like he's fine. So I just had to acknowledge that. That was a nervous system orienting in action there. So again, the live curated Q&A calls, they happen with my husband, Seth. My husband, Seth, is also a colleague of mine. He is one of the moderators. He is a pro, and he is wonderful when it comes to answering questions. So he hosts those calls. Again, they're on Thursday. Those calls are on Thursdays, 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. That's when we do them. But again, they're all recorded. Everything is loaded to the site. My training calls happen on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Now, I've been talking about the live components. There's one more live component I'm going to mention, and that is we call it text-based moderation. That doesn't mean that we're texting with you via text message. It means that on our program site, where all the curriculum lives, there are many areas where you can ask questions via typing of my team. And our team, there's, I think this year, 11 of us, myself not included. I'm not in that moderation team, but they are my professional team. They're colleagues. They're trained in somatic experiencing, somatic practice, other forms of somatic therapy. Some are trained in counseling and in psychotherapy. If you want to get to know some of those folks, just head to our site, and I'll get Diana to link this. You can meet the team. You can see the diversity of biography. It's a really great team. So this team, for 17 weeks, because we start with orientation week on Monday, we go through the 12 weeks, and then we give you an extra 4 weeks at the end of the 12 weeks. They're in there answering your questions, and they're in there 7 days a week, Monday to Friday, usually 3 times a day. And then on the weekends, usually we have two people in on the weekends. So there's always someone there to answer your question, at least within we'll say 48 hour, but usually it's a 24-hour period. All right, thanks. Thank you for, your comments are funny. Someone just asked me if I wanted to drink vodka with them. Not right now. So that made me laugh. So check out our team. They're amazing folk. All of them have gone through SmartBody SmartMind. Some of them went through SmartBody SmartMind before I knew them, obviously, and they just loved the curriculum so much. They saw the importance of the work, and so that's why they're working with us and they're on Team Lyon. So I've talked about the training calls, the Q&A calls, the text-based support. The next thing I'll talk about just really briefly is how the course is laid out. So as I've said, it's 12 weeks that we're live in session. 10 of those weeks, we have what we call modules. I call them labs. So each week we have a lab. Out of the 12 weeks, there are 10 labs. Each lab has 4 lessons. And those lessons are video trainings where you're learning about the theory of the nervous system, neuroplasticity. Also within those lessons are audio, neurosensory exercises. That is the practical component of my work. So they vary between video trainings and audio. The other thing about these lessons, especially the audio neurosensory exercises, is they're a blend. They're a blend of my expertise as a Feldenkrais practitioner, a somatic experiencing practitioner, and a somatic practice practitioner. If you don't know what these are, head again to my main site. There you'll find my bio, and you can get a list of my credentials. But basically, what I've done is I've taken these very, very powerful mind, body, nervous system, trauma healing methodologies, and I've blended them together into like a nice soup. And they work so well together. And one of the pieces of feedback I got from one of my colleagues, she is one of our team, because I said, what was it that was so unique about SmartBody SmartMind, even though she had had 30 plus years, actually might be more like 35, of training in the somatic healing arts. She's more senior than me, more advanced in that respect. And she said what it was the fact that you were bringing theoretical concepts into an experiential format. And that, to this day and age, hasn't really been done before. When we're in an SE environment or we're working with, say, a somatic experiencing practitioner, they may not have the skill set to teach in this way, to track the body, to track the sensations, to track the somatic experiences. And the reason why they don't is we are not taught that in the SE world. We're not taught that in the somatic practice world. I was taught that via my Feldenkrais world and via my training in fitness and in just being an exercise rehab specialist. I've been working with humans for a very long time. And so that is sort of one of the unique qualities of SmartBody SmartMind, is that experiential concept, quality that brings in the principles and the theories of these somatic healing trauma modalities. All right, I'm going to get into the questions. I think that's all I want to mention in terms of how the program works. This is a lifestyle. This isn't a quick fix. I know I say that quite a bit, and I keep reminding you guys of this. This is something that will infuse and embed and come into your physiology with time, with practice, with learning, with always having a beginner's mind. Super important. So just see this as not something that only happens for 12 weeks, but it happens indefinitely. And we're built to grow capacity. We're built to grow our ability to build more foundation, to heal, etc. All right. I'm going to come into the questions here. Hello, everyone. Hey, Becky. You say I have a friend with me considering to join. Awesome. So Alana asks, tapering off of an SSRI with a naturopath. So SSRIs is a type of pharmaceutical drug. And you say money is tight. I understand. So your question is, the 21-day So you say reset. It's just to be clear, it's called the 21-day nervous system tune-up. Is this enough to get started? My doctor tells me to go super slow with the nervous system, hoping to save money and do SBSM next year. Yeah, the 21 days is a great place to start. If it is not possible to purchase the full tuition of SmartBody SmartMind, or do the 12 pay, I'm going to make a note of that. Make sure all of you who are interested, there is a 12 payment plan. So the cost of the program is $1,997 US. That's a one-time pay, and that gives you membership for life. The other way that you can do this is 12 payments of $197 US. And of course, you pay that $197 now. And then if you choose to continue through the program, you pay that every month for 11 months in that case. The one thing I will mention, we do offer a refund policy. So once you begin the program, we give you 30 days to test it out, to see how the training calls work, to see if it's just for you. And if it is, wonderful. And if there's something within you that's like, I don't think I'm ready for this, or I don't like this, or I don't like how Irene teaches, or any of those things, then we will refund you your money with no questions asked. So there is that leeway there in the first 30 days to give it a try. Of course, do the work. That's the one thing that we say. It's very important that you apply and integrate. So I just wanted to say that, Alana, but the 21 days, just to give an idea, was curated from SmartBody SmartMind. So SBSM was kind of the first thing that I developed, and then we went into the 21 days. Okay. Or sorry, let me finish that sentence. We created the 21 days such that a person would be able to start whenever they came across the work. So in other words, if someone finds us in August, obviously enrollment isn't happening for SmartBody SmartMind, they could start then. All right. Dawn's question. What about core beliefs that stem from my childhood, like I'm not enough and it's not safe to feel safe? Can this coursework help with those? 100%, Dawn. So what you're talking about here, this is early trauma. This is what occurs when, and I think you probably know this, the environment wasn't safe. And that could be due to abuse. That could be due to neglect. It could also be due to a surgical trauma. It could be due to a birth trauma. It could be due to in utero trauma. Maybe mom was under intense stress. Okay, so what happens, sorry, I'm just making sure I'm seeing things clearly here. So what happens when we have this kind of intensity growing up is our cells aren't safe. And so part of the curriculum is giving you the opportunity to get into the cells, to get into the kidney adrenals, to get into the gut, the brainstem, all these sorts of things. Okay. So JA asks, I'm going to get to that in a second. You guys, I might need to pause for a second. I'm having something glitchy on my end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just give me 1 second here. Hang on. Give me a moment. All right. If I keep getting some glitches here, I will log out and I'll come back in. So just bear with me. If I disappear, I haven't left. So let's get to this question here from JA. So you write, I'm in the ER right now with long haul COVID. Sorry to hear about this. Heart rate, high rate, I think you mean heart rate spiking out of nowhere. All tests come back okay, but they don't know the cause. They have me on blood pressure meds to bring the heart rate down. So my sense is you're asking, will this help? My overarching answer is yes. And the reason why is that what we're seeing is a lot of these symptoms are nervous system related. And so if we really tune into the heart rate, the blood pressure, how our system is responding to stress, that is being sparked by an autonomic nervous system that is in some form of fight, flight, freeze, a little bit of everything. I don't want to get into all the elements around COVID and that, because that's a whole other element and there's lots of complexity there. But if we just look at this from a nervous system related point of view, we need to connect to our physiology and learn how to bring it down. So for example, if I just give you an example right now, in SmartBody SmartMind, we're building capacity to really sense our bodies. And if you guys want, you can do this with me as I move through this. You know, obviously these are my arms. You don't have to bring your hands here, but you could if you wanted to. Sometimes when our system is spiking, we need to bring ourselves back here. Sometimes we need to bring our attention out of here and over there. In other words, to the environment. There's the plant, there's the blue sky, there's my phone, there's my sweater, and really bring things back down. Now, the other part of SmartBody SmartMind is working with the stress physiology. So in the coursework, we will work with things like the kidney adrenals, the gut area, the brain stem, areas of the body that are called the diaphragms, which is our actual diaphragm, but also these levels of the body that contain emotion and stress and past experiences, sensations. And so we're getting into these very deep visceral qualities of the body that when we have had a stress, or in this case, perhaps an infection or a virus, something that spikes the system and it says danger, 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 something isn't right. We need to know how to come back to that system and actually say, everything's fine. Everything's okay. We know that your system is freaking out right now, but now we have to come back to the center of the body, or it might be the environment, or it might be a bit of both. It also might be bringing in a resource like, you know, a warm cup of tea or music or a funny story or our pet or something like a big blanket that wraps us in. So resources are another part of what we learn about in the course, in the program. But this is a great question. It really connects with just nervous system related troubles that do things like spike our heart rate, numb us out, cause our digestion to go all funny, those sorts of things. All right. Okay. Vincent asks, have you worked with folks who have lost the ability to feel emotions in their bodies, and can SBSM help with that? 100%. So when we don't feel in our body, that means that we're dissociated in some kind of a way. And so part of what I just talked about, Vincent, is getting back into the sensations, getting back into the environment, connecting at that level. And here's the thing, you know, we lose connection with our emotions because usually someone in our world, usually our parents, they didn't know how to do it themselves. And so they basically teach us to be numb or to not connect. And so part of this work as an adult is getting back that stuff that we just never got in the first place. If I go one more piece there, Vincent, where I was just talking about working with the viscera, working with the organs, those areas in our body, they hold emotion. So think about this for a second. If we really track, let's say, anger, we'll feel it somewhere in the body. It'll be in our belly, maybe in our throat, maybe in our chest, maybe it's in our movements, right? This fight that never got out because we had to be a good kid, or we couldn't fight because someone was maybe holding us down, for example, in the case of folks who are attacked or put under surgery and they can't break out of restraints, those sorts of things. So yes, I have worked with folks who have lost the ability to feel emotions, and SBSM helps by getting you back into these subtleties and nuances of the body. And also learning. Education is a huge part of the program. All right. Next question here is, I often see guptah and DNRS being recommended by people. What is the difference between guptah, DNRS, and SBSM? Great question. So I haven't done either of those programs myself, but many of our students have. And what they've reported, and I guess you could also see they're still doing SmartBody SmartMind after doing guptah and DNRS, is a lot of these programs, again, from what I've heard about secondhand, they're more mind-based. They're getting us to feel maybe the sensations, but to try to shift them from a more thought-based and a more emotionally based perspective. And the thing that we have to realize is that I know that guptah is really geared towards folks with chronic illness and fibromyalgia, and I think DNRS is more sensitivities, but also chronic pain, fibromyalgia. Those syndromes, these ailments, they are usually based in, I'm being very general, but usually based in early trauma, in utero trauma, things that we don't have control over when we're young. And then the system is stuck in this fight, flight, freeze. And so the difference with SBSM, from what I've heard, is we're getting way deeper into the physiology. So Dawn asks, this is this question goes nicely with the last one. So how doable are the practices that can help someone shift out of freeze? Sometimes I'm so stuck, I struggle to just drink the water sitting right next to me. So I'll say this, Dawn, if you're able to be here, connect to your computer, you can read a little bit, you can listen, you can follow a show. You could try doing some of my online resources that are free and just see how that goes. If you can do just even a minute or a couple of minutes of this kind of interaction, then you can do the program. If someone is not able to clean themselves, clothe themselves, get out of bed, like really, really debilitating incapacities like that, for example, then I would say that this might not be the best program for you. There needs to be a little bit, at least a little bit of self-initiative and sufficiency. And so the practices teach you how to get into the body and how to titrate, that's the fancy word, little drops at a time. Little drops at a time. Adam asks, any theory on why there are so many more women than men in the program? That's a great question, Adam. So first of all, I'm seeing more men start to do this work, which is great. But I've been in so many trainings throughout my day, Feldenkrais trainings, somatic experiencing trainings, other forms of mind-body trainings. And typically there's just a lot more girls, a lot more females, a lot more ladies in those courses. And I just think it's because I think historically, biologically, even the women tend to be the more nurture-based ones. We tend to feel more, in some ways we're programmed, I think, to want to heal, to want to help. Not to say that guys aren't in that boat either, because many are. But I would say proportionally, yes, typically we have more females, more of those chromosomes in the course, and it's fine. But I would say, Adam, that we're seeing more and more guys come in, which is a really good sign. And young men too, that's super important. Gina Giannina asks, what does lifelong access mean? Yeah, that basically means that you join and you have literally the program content for life. And we recommend that you download the information. You can download all the videos, all of the audios. It's all there for you to keep and store on your computer or hard drive. And yes, when you come back next year, if you want to come back and do it again, you don't have to pay. You just re-enroll and you're in. So Sweets MS1 says, I'm considering joining SBSM to help with chronic illnesses. I was wondering if heart palpitations are the result of stored trauma, if there's nothing structurally wrong with the heart. From my experience, yes. And so these palpitations, and again, it is very important, I believe, to get checked from a doctor, make sure things are structurally okay, all those sorts of things. But again, let's do a little story of the nervous system. If there is lots of stress, lots of trauma, let's just say from early life to now, fight, flight, that's the sympathetic energy. That is the, I got to protect myself. I have to fight. I have to run. We need adrenaline for that. We need our heart to go really, really fast to get the blood to the muscles, right? Let's just say we can't fight and we can't flee because let's just say that was just our home life 24/7. It was dangerous, it was toxic, or it doesn't even have to be abusive. It could be, I'm not able to speak up when I want to speak. I'm not allowed to be creative and goofy and the kid that I am. That in itself creates a situation where someone is wanting to express something. The parent, let's just say, or the school system or the society doesn't allow us to get that out. That creates a bit of a fight-flight response in the body. Typically, though, we don't know it. It's just part of our social conditioning. And so then I'm using my hands to describe this. So we've got this fight-flight, and then the freeze comes on, and it basically stores it inside. When we start to do more healing work, when we start to do more awareness work of our body, maybe we're now in a safer situation and there is no actual danger around us. This is very common. People will start to experience what seems like anxiety, what seems like panic, what seems like heart palpitations, and the heart is going up. But what that is the stored survival responses. It's the stored fight and flight visiting us saying, now it's more safe in your environment. We're gonna bring this up and out because we don't want to hold it inside anymore. You have to understand that holding this stuff in, it creates a lot of, I'm going to say that again a different way. It creates a lot of, or it requires a lot of energy to keep that stored inside. What we also know is that when we keep that stuff stored inside, this creates chronic illness. So part of the healing is to work with the physiology to get that stuff out in little bite-sized ways so that the system can digest it, integrate it, and heal it. All right, I'm going to get to some of the questions that were submitted. I'll just follow up because I just saw you had another comment here. I keep having premature atrial contractions and premature ventricular contractions. That's PACs and PVCs for years, but doctors can't seem to find the cause. So I'll be really honest, I experienced those too. I've been experiencing those more in the past year. And I'm pretty certain that it is very old stuff that has been stored from my lifetime of accidents, injuries, surgeries, where basically these traumas happened and we just didn't do anything with them back in the 70s and 80s and 90s, right? I mean, even now, we're probably not doing very much with them. Hopefully some parents are getting a bit more tuned in to the importance of taking care of their kids when they've had an accident or a scare or a trauma, and they give them time to cry, to scream, to hit things, to rest, to not just go back to school like immediately. Or in my case, I was a figure skater, so an ice skater, and I skied a lot and I did a lot of other sports. And the amount of times that I fell and hurt myself, or fell and knocked myself, or knocked the wind out of myself, or broke my arms, there's hundreds of times, but I don't remember ever in my mind having an injury like that and someone actually nurturing me, other than just get off the ice really quick. Okay, are you fine? You're not, bleeding. You don't have a broken bone. Get back on the ice and keep going. And so what happens in a situation like that, I'm kind of giving you guys just this overview, is that little physiology doesn't know how to take care of themselves. And they're told, just get back on, you'll be fine. And so we hide all of that fight, flight in. We go into a bit of freeze. It's not complete freeze, because if it were, we wouldn't be able to move or talk or walk. So we go into what we would call functional freeze. I actually did a video on functional freeze. It's a super important one. It shows how common this is in our culture and our humanity. And so if you think about that, every day of our lives, every week of our lives, we have a situation where we feel some kind of survival response, but no one is there to help us with it. We have to then go into freeze. And so we store all this stuff in our system. And then this is how we end up with these chronic problems later on, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. I'm going to get into some questions here that were submitted. So one here is from SBSM member, Vince. You are a 21-day nervous system tune-up member and you're considering SBSM. So you want to know, you have difficulty feeling and labeling emotion. Can SBSM still be helpful despite this? I don't believe I was like this when I was young, but I don't know if and when a traumatic shift occurred that would have cut me off from my emotions. So the general answer to this question, Vince, is yes. In the program, and even in in 21 days, if you can recall, I'm never really asking you guys as the students, is this sadness? Is this anger? Is this joy? You're really tracking the sensations, feeling the body, orienting, using, not so much in the 21 days, but in SBSM, we're using a lot of touch. We're using breath. We're not really manipulating the breath, but we're growing the capacity of the breath. One of the things I will bring to attention in the curriculum for SBSM, we're working with something called the diaphragms and the joints. So the joints are pretty simple. They're wherever two bones come together, and we have them all over. Our joints can store memory. They can store sensation. They can store emotion. Same with these levels of the diaphragms that are kind of like, in some ways, the chakras, but they're not, we don't see them as chakras, at least in our work, but they are centers where energy can be held from the top of the head all the way down to the pelvis, to the feet, to all these levels. And if we think about when we have a traumatic event, so often we just think of the brain reacting and storing the trauma, but the body, which is exactly what we're doing here, that's why it's called SmartBody SmartMind. The body holds that memory, that trauma, but it's holding it via the organs. It's holding it via the tissues, the fascia, the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments, right? That's where the joints are, the organ systems. And so part of SBSM, and what is much more in depth than the 21 days, is we're getting into all those places. And then your second question is, do people taking antidepressants have more difficulty releasing stored survival energy according to your experience? I, for one, sure know that it's harder to feel anger or cry. So I'm not an expert in pharmaceutical medication, but I do know just from experience that people have said that, yes, this is common. Very similar with folks who take in a lot of cannabis, a lot of marijuana. I have found that can be very difficult to tap into the subtlety of the body when someone is a chronic user of cannabis. Again, that's from experience and seeing it, because it kind of numbs the system out. And so the one thing I know is you have to, if you have a physician, a pharmacist, or maybe it's a psychiatrist, let them know that you're doing this work, monitor it. The experience I've had with those clients of mine who are on some form of psychiatric medication is they start to taper off because they don't need the same levels. And then that's, again, something that you have to work with and feel into, depending, just based on your experiences. But yeah, when our system is in any way numbed out, again, via a pharmaceutical drug or some kind of substance, we're not getting a clear picture accurately of what's happening inside. But we can't just get off of these things cold turkey, especially with benzodiazepines. You never want to come off of those things quickly. You have to taper in micro tapers. But the key is growing your own physical capacity and somatic capacity with the lessons, little bit by little bit. Some of the lessons within SBSM are working a bit more with anger and healthy aggression. So as I say that, I start to smile because I think of the lessons that bring in the mouth and the teeth and the roar and the voice. So even if you can't feel and name an emotion, I might even pose the question right now: Can you do a little bit of a grr, right? A growl? Can you make a sound that sounds a little more like a vibration? And then the key is feeling that vibration, that movement, and then that's where we then teach you guys how to track what you're sensing inside with that movement, with that behavior. I hope that makes sense. Okay. I caught a question here. Alana asks, why does anxiety get worse before it gets better when we start this type of work? Is it a good sign we are in the right place? Yes, it is. As hard as that sounds. When we start to feel, and I just kind of touched on that when I was answering the question and mentioning the whole fight flight stuff and how we trap it inside. I don't love the word anxiety, but we use it. I use it. But what that is old survival stress coming up and out, right? And it can be biological. It is biological, but we can also psychosomatically spark it up. We can think of something stressful or an event, and we can actually make it biologically happen in our body. This is a real thing. And so what happens, Alana, is that when we start to grow our capacity, get into these organs, understand the theory, do the practices, we start to see the world a little differently, because you will start to see people differently because you start to see their nervous system tendencies. That just sparks up all these openings in the system. And then that's where we feel more of this fight flight energy, i.e. anxiety. So it is a good sign. One of the toughest things I think at the beginning of this work or within this work is sometimes our sleep can get thrown off. Sometimes folks who have been, people will say, when I sleep, I'm dead to the world. You know that saying? Usually when a person is sleeping dead to the world, that's a sign that they're in a pretty deep, what we would call shutdown response when they go to sleep. Because we actually, when we're sleeping, we want to be out, we want to be internal, but we need to have a little spidey sense still alert, so that if we hear, a door open or something creak, and that shouldn't be happening, we want to wake up. But some people can sleep through, storms, and they don't even know that's happening. That doesn't necessarily mean that's wrong, but sometimes part of this shift from being in a very deep shutdown or functional freeze is good sleepers will have troubled sleep for a while until the system comes back into better regulation. And everyone's different. My system, for example, that part didn't change too much, but there's been moments in my life when I'm working on an old piece of trauma or something new's coming up, and I'll wake up in the middle of the night feeling panic. And what that is it's old traumas coming up and out. The key is that when you wake up in that panic, for example, that you know what's happening, that you can say to yourself, this is survival stress. I'm going to turn my light on. I'm going to sit up. I'm going to do some of the SBSM lessons. I'm going to orient. I'm going to make some sound. I'm going to maybe feel the diaphragms or do some movement, because just laying here and trying to sleep isn't going to help. So SmartBody SmartMind is going to give you these other tools and these other insights into what's happening in my physiology right now. And when we have that higher brain knowing, we can be a much better advocate for ourselves. Okay. But that's a very important question. Hello from Nashville. Joe asks, I notice I get very angry when I hear my partner slurp or chew. I literally have to leave the room, and then I feel ashamed of having such rage in me. Can your program help? Yeah. So again, there is something in that sound that is overstimulating your system. It's like nails on a chalkboard, or the sound of loud sirens. Again, those aren't really good for our ears, but it's creating a response in the body. And so if we think of something like this, slurping or chewing, those are really biological processes. You know, I'm drinking my tea, I bring it into my stomach, there might be a burp that comes out, a gurgle, that mastication, that's what chewing is. It's very biological, it's very human, right? It's very mammalian. One of the things that I've seen in my practice and that is that when we have unhealed stuff, all sorts of things, and I have one idea that's coming to mind and I'll say it in a second, but when we have these old things in us that we're not even aware of, we can be oversensitized and a little grossed out by bodily functions. It's like blood. A lot of people, when they see blood, they get woozy and they can sometimes pass out, which is interesting, isn't it? Because we all have blood in our system, and some folks are okay with it and some aren't. Sometimes it's something that we've learned from our parents. Maybe mom, for instance, had that reaction and we just learned to be like that through modeling. And so the one thing that makes me curious about this is, and again, I'm not saying that this is what it is, Joe, but it came to mind is, you know, when you were young, was it really stressful at the dinner table? You know, and again, I don't know your history, but did mom or dad, were they always fighting? You know, did dad chew a bit harder when he was a little angry? Was there a slurp that occurred that would tell you that mom was just not happy with dad, for example? Or was there just tension around meals for whatever reason? That can actually prime us to be oversensitized to something like that later on. And then the shame, you said, is very common in our systems because we're reacting to this biological thing in our body. We can't stand it. It's got this sense of kind of disgust, like, ugh, that's gross, I have to leave. And then we realize that that reaction didn't match with what was happening. And in such a case like that, how can we start to hear that sound, maybe feel what's happening in the body, track the sensations, and see if we can connect it to something in the past, or maybe something isn't in the past and it's just creating this ugh. But disgust is actually something that we play with in SmartBody SmartMind. It's highly, interestingly enough, Joe, connected to shame, toxic shame. And so when we have a lot of toxic shame from an upbringing that was not very pleasant or good, one of the ways to work with that toxic shame is to actually start to get better at feeling our disgust. And so my hunch, as I piece together your question here, there's something going on with that sound of a bodily function around chewing, eating, something around toxic shame, and something around not having been able to process and get something out of your system, most likely from a very long time ago. Now, of course, I could be wrong, but that's just what's coming top of mind right now. So the overarching answer to the question is yes, this is what SmartBody SmartMind can help you with. Okay, I'm going to get back to the questions that were submitted via email. So Erin asks, I used to be a teacher of adults. So I used to teach art and sculpture. That's awesome. I love sculpture when I was in high school. I come from a background of trauma and addiction, but had mostly got myself functional 20 years ago. I always knew there was more I needed to do. And when I found you online and I read Waking the Tiger, which is Peter Levine's one of his books, I knew what it was. And I knew what it was. I need help with trauma and freeze from when I was young. So you don't do any more than reading and watching videos. And 2 years ago, I ended up having a massive breakdown of my body, my nerves, and cognitive abilities. I was in and out of the hospital. I ended up on all sorts of meds and interventions, and I'm now relatively functional. So that's great. My question is SBSM something that I can do more just for myself? I lost my job, so I'm not working with others anymore. 100%. 100%, Erin. This course, this program, SBSM, it's geared for the person. It's not a professional training. It's not teaching you how to work with trauma in the body for other people. It's completely for personal consumption. So yes. And then I will say, if you do go back to working with folks with art and sculpture, which would be wonderful in the future, if you do go that route again, you will be able to take the information you've learned from SBSM, and it isn't about teaching them the curriculum because that's not allowed, but you will be able to interact with them in a different way because you're seeing things through a different lens of the nervous system. I think that would be really fun to work with people with sculpture and have that knowledge and perspective. You said also, I'm still pretty shaky on my feet. I sleep a lot and I'm limited a lot now in what my body will do. Is it okay to still do SBSM? Will it work for one like me who is somewhat damaged? 100%. From what I know, most of the people that go through SmartBody SmartMind, they're not going into it because they're already in really, really good health and have lots of capacity. Again, we're in a culture where most of us seek out help when we are pretty damaged, when there's something broken, when there's something wrong, when we know that we don't have the capacity for things. So 100%. The key, Erin, and everyone here, is going at your own pace, taking your time, asking questions, titrating, pacing yourself. All right. Oh, great, Joe. I'm glad that question got to you. Oh, I'm just reading the follow-up. So Anne said regarding my last question with Joe, my son can't listen to chewing at all. My parents constantly yelled at us at the dinner table. Yes. So interesting how these things mix up, isn't it? And how they intertwine. The one thing I'll be really honest that I've seen as I do this work more and more is that we have no idea how complex and intricate the human body is. And when we can learn how to listen to it a lot better, and we understand what we do know about how the system works, i.e. how the nervous system works in relationship to the organs, relationship to fight, flight, and freeze, when we get that on board, we actually start to become, that's why I say, our own medicine. Okay, I'm going to get back to the questions that were submitted. I'm going to have a little more to drink here. For those here watching, make sure to take breaks and bring your eyes away from the screen every now and again, just to reset the visual. All right, Phil asks, I have digestion issues and my throat tightens when I get stressed and anxious, which makes me want to retch. So for those of you that might not know what that word means, it's like to vomit almost. And this actually, interestingly enough, blends really well with the last question from Joe. I love it when this happens. So you said I have social and food anxiety, so both of them together is a nightmare. I'm highly functioning in the sense of work, but I live alone and avoid going out. It's too much energy for me. I also have IBS often too, irritable bowel. I don't have any extreme issues, which your examples do. Can you please advise, is this course for me? I've already done your 21-day tune-up, which was helpful. Awesome. So Phil, if the 21-day tune-up was helpful, then I am pretty certain that SmartBody SmartMind will be even more helpful. The connection between the digestion issues, the throat, wanting to retch, the anxiety, it's kind of like a perfect storm of stored trauma. So my hunch is that there is some stuff that might be connected to toxic shame, some stuff connected to storing in anger and healthy aggression. While having a tight throat doesn't mean that that's stored anger, it can definitely be a part of that, as I need some more liquid here. So yeah, I'm going to give here's a little example. So one of the concepts in somatic experiencing, so this is pulled from Peter Levine's work and some other forms of psychology, is something called coupling dynamics. What that means is that sometimes we can couple, I like to use the word Velcro, we stick things all together, right? And it's just not good. Like right here, I have some tea, I have a glass of water, got all my liquids, and this is my old coffee from this morning. All these liquids are separate and in their own containers. I could put the tea and the water together because this is herbal tea and that would taste pretty good. But if I were to take this coffee and put it into this tea, that wouldn't taste very good. This would be an overcoupling. They're just not meant to be together, right? So if we think about some of these elements of tightening in the throat, IBS, anxieties with food, that retching, there's something going on in the system where things are tightly wound together. Case in point, we don't want this to happen. And so part of this work is uncoupling these things and being able to, and again, this is just an example because I don't know your personal history, so I'm just giving you a hypothetical, but it would be like, okay, when that throat tightens, can you really tune into it and connect to it while also connecting to other parts of the physiology? So for example, let's just say that throat tightening, again, this is just an example, you guys, is a sign of an old trauma from when you had a tonsillectomy. When we take our tonsils out surgically, when we're kids. And let's just say you've never considered that surgical procedure as something traumatic, but I'm here to say they are. And so let's just say that you had this tonsillectomy and it was really scary and no one was there. It was the 70s, the 60s, parents weren't allowed in the room. This is my personal example, by the way. And you're freaked out. And maybe you wake up from that tonsillectomy and you taste blood, because sometimes that'll happen. And it freaks you out because you think something's wrong. The little person might think they're dying. No one's there to help them. And the system goes into a bit of a fight, flight, freeze. While having this sore throat, while wanting to cry out for mom, and while tasting this disgusting taste of blood that shouldn't be in the throat. I know this is a very graphic example, you guys, but I wanted to bring in a little complexity to show how some of these things that manifest as symptoms, as these anxieties, these sensations, these emotions, these visceral reactions, they could be tied to something like that we never even considered. And so when we can really listen to the body and figure out these little puzzle pieces and start to, again, I'll go back to my glass example, decouple them, that's when the healing really, really starts, and it really starts to unfold. I hope that makes sense, Phil. So 100%, if the 21 days was really good for you and you were able to follow the material and you could initiate to do the work, then I would say, please join SmartBody SmartMind. It'll be, I think, really, really useful. Okay. Next question from, I'm not going to be able to pronounce this, May. So, hello, I am a 60-year-old woman from the Netherlands. A few years ago, I came across several sources of information about autism in women. I could relate so much to the described symptoms that I decided to have myself tested. At the age of 57, I was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. Ever since my diagnosis, I have been wondering what autism actually is. And to me, it very much seems to be an extreme expression of a dysregulated nervous system. I know I've been suffering from early trauma, probably as early as in utero. I'm very sensitive. I'm always very alert. I've never felt safe. And this combined with high intelligence, high intuition, and a fragile body has been a complicated path. And you also say you have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which, again, EDS is something that I've talked about in other videos. We did an interview. Diana, you could pop it up here with Elizabeth. She was a 21-day tune-up member, and she actually healed her fibromyalgia, chronic pain, and EDS going through that program. So you are going to register for SBSM, so that's great, because you have a strong feeling this will be helpful. But you just wanted my take on autism. I am not an expert in autism or any of those. We would call them neurodivergent. I don't like the word disorder. People who are living with these deeper sensitivities, these other kinds of, it's really these incredible traits of high intelligence and sensitivity and alertness. I think because your hunch, because I'm going to put this back to you, if your hunch is that this is related to your dysregulation in your nervous system, and you say here in utero trauma, it's very possible that if we think you're in your 60s now, a whole lifetime of having to manage and cope, be in this body of yours with all of this early dysregulation has created a situation where you are way more attuned, sensitive, intuitive, empathetic. What we know from kiddos who were, let's say, born preemie or severe early trauma, it's like their alert mechanisms are just so on high. Because if we think about this, and again, I'm going to use an example like with the last question. Let's just say a baby is born into the world and they're born premature, which happens a lot. And now, of course, we have the skills, the medical interventions to keep them alive, but they're so small and they're not quite developed and they're alone in this incubator, right? And they're being poked and prodded and there's fluorescent light and there's no sunlight and there's no caring mother there. And I know that they're getting much better now in neonatal infant wards where people come and they touch the skin and they talk to them and that, but there's still stress. And so that little nervous system is becoming primed. They're becoming overcoupled with all of this stimulation. And so what they then realize, or what they know, not cognitively, because at that little age of preemie, you are not cognitively online, you're not emotionally online yet. All you're feeling is sensation. All you're feeling is the energies and the lights and the smells and all the things. And so this is what can create these high sensitivities. Also to, again, chemicals, right? Lots of chemicals are in hospitals, for example. And so I think, if your intuition is saying that that might be what it is, then I think you should follow that and you should really investigate that. As far as other individuals who might be diagnosed with autism and that's where they are, I don't know. I'm not sure. My hunch is my sense is a very large portion of folks who would be classified in that spectrum. There's a lot of most likely early trauma going on that was never diagnosed, it was never addressed. And then that individual, that little nervous system is just having to kind of meander through life and figure out how to be in relation to their nervous system and the world. And this is why many folk have to be very, isolated, because the world is it's just too stimulating, right? It's too stimulating to hear things, bright lights, all those sorts of things, but it can often be traced back to those early years. I mentioned medical trauma twice. Remember the tonsillectomy example and this with the preemie, because it's often some of the traumas that we never think of, but they actually can be some of the most devastating ones that are never really diagnosed. Dental trauma is another one that we tend to not think about, but if we've had really terrible experiences at the dentist, we're having to stay in that chair, someone's in our mouth, that's a very unsafe area for someone to be in. But because of our higher brain capacity and our nervous system physiology to shut down and freeze, we can trap so much stuff, right? That desire to bite the hygienist or hit the dentist away or get out of that chair, all that stuff can get stored in the system, that fight and flee, for decades. All right, I'm going to get back to the next question here. Joanna asks, so you've been following my work for a while, awesome, and you're curious as to know whether or not SBSM would be worth it for me. So it looks like you've done the 21 days. You've done a lot of work already on attachment trauma, low self-worth, fear responses. At the beginning of this journey, counseling was helpful, as were significant dietary and environmental changes. Removing gluten, fragrance, toxic chemicals. There we go. I just mentioned chemicals. But I began to realize that I had plateaued and there was still something missing. So I dove down the trail of emotional and energetic work and doing deeper work with other individuals. Havening, Dr. Deco, I don't know who that is, sound therapy, biofield tuning, working with frequencies, all was very profound for me. Awesome. I don't know these works, but I understand frequencies and working at that level. So I get it. Pendulum work, I get all that. So I also realize I need to get out of my kind and into my body more. Great. So doing more yoga, running, learning to kayak, ski, that sounds wonderful. I still sense there is more I could do and uncover around held trauma. So I guess I'm wondering if your program could further the progress I've already made, or if those things I've already done will do the same thing with more time. Just trying to use my time and resources carefully. Great question. So from what I've experienced, Joanna, and it looks like you're in Vancouver. Awesome. All of the things you're doing are wonderful. The fitness, the frequency work, the dietary changes, environmental changes, all very important. And those, from what I know, because I've dabbled in a lot of that stuff, I do it myself, they're not going to get into that survival physiology in the way that SmartBody SmartMind creates for you, the student. So I'll keep it simple and say, yes, there will definitely be benefit And the other thing you actually might really enjoy, if you haven't checked out any of my talks or interviews with Janet Raftis, just as an FYI. She's an SBSM member. She's a psychic medium, a Reiki master. She and I have done some interviews on past life trauma. She has given us a few testimonial videos that are on our site. We can pop them up here so you can watch those. Janet Raftis is her name. But here's an example of someone who had so much training in the energetic realm in those levels of healing. And what she says came to light when she did SBSM was she just got connected to her body in a way that she never had before. And she was connected to her body. Similar clients will say that, or students, they're fitness trainers, they're yoga practitioners, they're even SE practitioners. And they'll say, wow, I had no idea how much nuance I wasn't getting at. And then they went into SBSM and this whole other world opened up. So the answer is yes. All right. Oh, funny, I printed these out twice. So there's actually only one more question here. So I'm going to get to the question on the printed pages, and then I'm going to get back into the comments, and then we'll wrap up. So this question is from Anonymous. You've already registered. Awesome. So you say, I registered for your program, and I wanted to ask if you feel that night terrors are rooted in nervous system dysregulation, and if one learns how to better self-regulate, that they over time may dissipate. Absolutely. That's my answer. I used to have those. I haven't written about this formally yet, but yes, night terrors can be very much related to obviously trauma and lots of things, but I seem to be on this theme of surgical trauma. Anesthesia, surgical trauma, and near-death experiences are all can be very traumatic. When we go to sleep at night, we're kind of going into an unconscious state. When our body's mechanisms are we're not sitting up, we're not talking, we're not eating, we're not doing the daily things, there's less sympathetic charge. There's less of that fight, flight keeping us going. So it allows the systems to bubble up the very deep unconscious stored things that are sitting in our somatic physiology, in our memories. I don't think we still understand how dreams really occur because they can be so crazy. They can be very healing. They can be very terrific, terrifying. And it's just, there's so much diversity in our dream state. But what happens is when we go into that kind of unconscious state, it's the way we are when we're under for surgery. It's the place that we start to go towards when we're about to die, like a near drowning, a near choking, something that's life-threatening, and then we come out of it. And so these terrors are the fight, flight energy coming up and out. The trouble is that if someone doesn't understand that, they just think something is really wrong with them, then often what occurs is they'll get a medication so they can sleep through the night. So yes, they can sleep through the night, but what's happening is that thing, that trauma, that fight, flight, maybe terror, near-death freeze action is just getting suppressed more and more, and then it never gets resolved. So 100%. All right, let me get into the comments here. Okay, Kathy asks, let me just have a little more sip here. I've been trying to heal the body with my mind. Will SBSM help me connect for the first time in my 54 years to allow my body to heal even with limited mobility like chair yoga and floor work? 100%, Kathy. So you have been diagnosed with MS 22 years ago, and you've been in a wheelchair for 8 years. After listening to you for 2 years, I did 13 days of the 21-day tune-up. So yeah, if you've been able to do the 21 days, And I'm just seeing you have another follow-up question here. If you've been able to work through the 21 days, Kathy, then you will definitely be able to do SmartBody SmartMind. And so the thing that's, again, just much more nuanced in SBSM is we're doing more work with the organs. We're doing more work with the viscera. There are more Feldenkrais movement lessons, but those can all be done modified if you can lay down in your bed, if you can be in a chair and just have some modifications. And if you're not sure how to modify, that's where you just ask. You ask my team, how could I modify this? And our staff are super creative, and we've worked with many, 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 many people. Probably if we think of the 11 or so staff members that answer the questions, probably thousands and thousands and thousands of people we've worked with. And so your other question, can you address the homework aspect of the program, time involved daily, and more specifically around the physical parts? And is this something that someone with limited mobility in a wheelchair can do? So yes, so there's no assigned homework and that you have to get it done because it's all about going at your own pace. And so each lab, each module has 4 lessons. And that lesson could be a video training. It could be an audio guided exploration, one of those 2. And pretty much all the lessons can be done in a chair, with the exception of some of, as I mentioned, the Feldenkrais lessons, but those can be modified as well. You can use your imagination. You can visualize these movements. If you can, I'm not sure if you can, but if you can lay down on the floor or, like I said, on a bed, a firmer mattress is a bit better so that you can feel the body moving. You can 100% do the work. So I think if you can join us, you will probably have a lot of good healing and transformations. We did have one, I know that there's been others who have gone through SBSM who are living with MS. We did a video chat with Linda, it's her name, from quite a while ago. She did one of the first ever rounds of SmartBody SmartMind. Diana could pop up the video with her. I think it says Healing from MS. She's also on our SmartBody SmartMind webpage on the video testimonial area. So have a listen. And I know that she continued to improve and get better. I haven't kept in touch with her, but I know that the lessons, the experience, the learning was invaluable for her. Okay, next question. So someone has a question about mold. I have mold illness, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but have you had any experience with others with mold sickness by chance? So I do know from seeing conversations that there have been people who have been dealing with mold illness, Lyme, all sorts of illnesses. We don't track all of our students and find out exactly what it was that they were working with, dealing with. But I can tell you this, when our nervous system is healthier, when we're more connected to it, and all the things I've been talking about, our immune system, our capacity to detox, it increases. And so again, not my specialty, the area of mold. Hopefully you have other resources where you're working with that to try to detox and move this out of your system. But the more regulated the nervous system, the better the system is at dealing with a foreign substance, a long-term illness, et cetera, et cetera. A virus, a bacteria, all these things. The more robust our nervous system is, the better capacity it has to fight off things that are foreign to the body and that are maybe toxic. For instance, cancer cells, right? We know through some of the research that there is a preponderance of certain cancers in folks who have unhealed early trauma. And again, it comes down to that immune system being able to detect cells that are replicating not in the way they should, and those killer cells go in and attack those precancerous cells or the cancer cells, for example. When our nervous system is drained and is constantly working to protect because of stored survival responses from unhealed stuff, the immune system is kind of just hanging. It's not doing anything. It can't, because the nervous system is like, we need to protect this threat or this perceived threat that's going on. And so when we start to tame these survival responses, when we start to work with the survival responses and move them out and bring more capacity on board, it gives the nervous system chance to talk more with the immune system, to talk more with the digestive system, the cardiovascular system, the endocrine system, the muscular system, the social system, all these things. So hopefully that answers that question. All right. Yeah, Dawn, your comment here is valid. You said, I feel scared at the thought that the program might cause trouble sleeping from anxiety coming up. I already struggle with feeling like it's important to stay awake later than I want to. I think that at the end of the day, for me at least, and for the students that I work with, it's important to see the macro long-term picture if you can. And there is this element of how can we see this from a long view, a long-term work in progress. And it's possible that, you know, as you said, that you tend to stay awake later than you want to. So it could be that it's opposite for you. Like, we really won't know until you get into the work. But at the end of the day, when we do get this regulation back on board, the system's hormonal responses to sleep-wake patterns, obviously the sun, natural light, all these things, it starts to kind of get into a better rhythm and flow such that we are getting tired at night and we're awake in the morning more naturally. But it's got to feel right for you, right? It's got to feel right for you. Oh, thanks, Becky. Becky wrote here in the comments, I have autism and I'm already in the program. This is my second year and I'm able to manage my nervous system better. I still wear special earplugs, not as often, but I do. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I think the thing, for example, you know, when I sleep, I need to have it be black in the room. Even though I've got regulation with my system, I can't have a humming, you know, next to me. I don't want electrical appliances around me. There needs to be a dark room. It needs to be good temperature. All these things are true even when your system is regulated. So sometimes we need little tools like earplugs and that kind of thing. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So thanks for sharing that, Becky. Natalie said, you just registered for SBSM, yay. And you finished the 21-day tune-up, awesome. Lost my eyes, lost the train there. Since starting, I've struggled to get deep breath or a complete yawn. Is my system trying to come out of fight, flight, freeze? So I see what you're asking here, Natalie. So I can't demonstrate this, but sometimes when we try to take a deep breath, there's this block, right? Like we kind of go, and that's it. When our lungs are fully regulated and online and all the systems are good, there is this very big global breath pattern that we get into. We see this so much when we see a healthy baby, for example, that's just sleeping, or we're with it and it's just, you feel their breath go globally through the whole system, right? We see this in our dogs and cats when they're chilling out or taking a nap and they're just like, there's just this like organic expansion in all directions. Humans, and this is why we're here, they have this tendency, as we know, and that's why we're talking about this, to trap, of course, these fight flight responses. We live in freeze for so much of the time. And when that happens, the nervous system is impacting that fight, flight, freeze on all the time, even though we might not realize it's there. It impacts all of our structures. So again, just a reminder, the nervous system connects to all these structures, the muscle tone, the digestion, the capacity to move and have a suppleness in the muscles and the tissues, and for the blood to come in and out and give oxygen and take away waste products and all these things. So as we start to become more connected, the real word I'm looking for here is capacity, but also coherence. This is something we get into in the first couple of weeks of SBSM in one of our training calls. This coherence for these tissues to be in sync with each other, that's when there can be that deep, satisfying yawn, right? That deep breath. The image I just had to describe what I just said biologically would be like a symphony. If you've ever gone to a symphony, or you could just Google this, right? Before the orchestra starts playing their piece, they're practicing their instruments, right? And it sounds kind of all over the place. But then the conductor comes in and they do their thing and they all get their instruments play. And then he or she starts to conduct the music. That's like a good working nervous system. Think of the conductor like the autonomic nervous system. And that autonomic nervous system is influencing all of the pieces, all of the areas of the orchestra. So, the strings, it's like the cardiovascular system, the percussion is like the digestive system. You get it, hopefully. And so part of getting this regulation back on board is we're orchestrating our systems way better. They're all in flow, right? And so part of the work, I should say, is you are becoming kind of the conductor. You're doing the work with your body. You're learning about it. You're bringing in these sensory motor aspects. And by doing that, there is a process of that feeding the autonomic nervous system to know how to be better regulated. So I hope that makes sense. Hey, Gloria, one of our alum here, you wrote, the education has been a revelation to what real trauma healing is. Thank you. I agree. Looking forward to year 2. Dawn asks, what kind of trauma symptoms might an adult have whom experienced a spinal tap as an 18-month-old baby? I have no memory of the procedure, but did have a nightmare about it as a child. So the symptoms can be vast. This is the thing is, again, it looks like the surgical thing is a theme today. We could have 100 babies that have all had spinal taps when they were 18 months old, and how they come out of that is very individual. It depends how they were nurtured afterwards. But a trauma like this is very significant, because my sense is there's anesthesia maybe involved, maybe not. It's hard to say. Back in the day, we would not anesthetize. Drives me crazy thinking about this, but infants, when they had certain procedures, surgical procedures, and so, they're feeling the pain. So you're having this thing occur to you. And with that, there is this overwhelming sensation in the body. One of two things happens. The system goes into overdrive and it's like tuned to hypersensitive, sympathetic, adrenalized fight flight. Or the flip side, which is usually more the case, is they feel all that intensity, that sympathetic, and then the system goes, I can't handle this, I'm shutting down. And so with shutdown, over time, over decades, the symptoms people get are vast. This is what creates chronic illness, autoimmunity, various forms of mental illness. the list is long. So the key is not necessarily tracking what the symptoms are, but going back to the body and working with the system to start to heal that horrific, terrorizing, intense experience that, you know, probably might have saved your life, these little ones' lives, but still came with a lot of intensity. I hope that answers your question. Gianna asks, I tend to feel or think like my body works against me, and I believe this is due to trauma. Can this program help? In other words, me changing that feeling and trusting in my body's own capacity to heal. 100%. This is what I hear. We hear over and over again is a person is starting to trust their bodies more. I don't know how many times I've heard that come out of the mouth of our students. And so, yes, 100% yes. Of course, and I'm going to say this, I haven't mentioned this yet today, and then we'll wrap up shortly here. We have to do the work. So the key with getting better, the key with seeing the results, the key with having success, the key to growing capacity and regulation and working with this stuff is you do need to show up. Now, you have to show up in a pace that works for you. So for example, the training calls that I run are usually about 90 minutes long, kind of the same time we were on today. You might only do 10 minutes of that lecture, and that's fine. The key is that you're not pushing yourself to be the good student. The key is that you're listening. Even the theory is an experience in being in your physiology. And I will continually remind you guys, what are you noticing? Even though we're doing theory, right? I do that less when I do these Q&A calls because I want to get through as many questions as possible. But even in listening to the theory, it will spark up some form, usually of physical sensation, right? And so the key is, Giannina, is just going with your own pace, engaging with the material, taking your time, asking questions, et cetera, et cetera. Thanks for that input there, Don. Yeah, you just said no anesthesia with a spinal tap, and the doctors told my parents to get as far away from the room as possible so they would not be able to hear me. I'm going to finish your sentence there, probably cry. Yeah, that's very common. So I'm really sorry that happened. And then the key is how can, in a situation like that, how can you work with the body? And here's one other thing I will say before I wrap up. When one goes into SmartBody SmartMind, or even the 21-day nervous system tune-up, it doesn't matter. We are at no point in time are asking you what your traumas are. If you want to introduce yourself, which we have a place for, and you want to share your personal experiences and the things that you've lived through and with, 100% cool. That's great. But we don't need to know what's going on or what happened for you to do the curriculum. And so again, we're not trying to fish and find the old traumas. We're actually kind of in a weird way reverse engineering the trauma healing by just working with bringing more awareness and capacity and intention to the physical body, to the nervous system, to these areas that I keep pointing to with my hands, this viscera. Because this is the area, especially with young little traumas like this one that you were talking about, Dawn, this is where you're feeling the intensity. It's not in the cognitive processes, because at that age of 18 months and anything kind of under the age of 3, there's no verbiage. It's all pre-verbal trauma. So it's all somatic. That makes sense, you guys? So this is why we have to get expert at our somatic experiences, understand the theory, which is a huge part of the training, and then bring them together so that we can start to move with ourselves in a different way. Hey, Alana, totally get the FOMO. And what I'll just say is get into the 21 days, start the work, come to my drop-in classes, which I run once a month, and the next year will be here before you know it. Time is flying by right now. literally. So, oh, there was a question I missed. I was just reminded, Matthew, as you wrote about tics and tremors. I am going to comment on that, and then I will, oh, another one. You guys are bringing more questions to me. Totally fine. I'm going to get to these. So, hey, Matthew, it says you just joined. Awesome. So you have cervical dystonia and head tremors and random tics when at rest. I've worked hard over the years and have improved drastically, but I know this work is so needed. Yeah, so tics and tremors, restless leg syndrome, you know, when you see someone and they're like, I'm not going to do it because my computer's going to shake, their legs like going like a rabbit kind of thing. Tics, tremors, even I put OCD into this. Anything where there's this repetitive pattern that doesn't need to be there necessarily, that is often a sign of something nervous system related at the motor level, the movement level. So a lot of what I have seen with tics and tremors, we would call this Tourette's also, is it's usually some form of incomplete trauma response. The technical word is procedural memory. There was a procedure that the body wanted to do and see something, and for whatever reason, it got stopped. And so the nervous system, I'm kind of using my head here in a weird way, but the nervous system, let's just say it couldn't look to something because it wanted to, for whatever reason, but there's a procedure written in the system to keep doing, to want to look towards something. And so the system, the nervous system, will create these repetitive tics, movement patterns. We call them incomplete procedural memories, trying to see that thing. And so a big part of the work is unlocking these patterns through the work that we do. And a lot of times these repetitive behaviors can start to soften, start to diminish, because we're not just saying, okay, stop doing that movement. We're having you feel internally what's going on in the system when that movement starts happening. So that's just kind of a crash course there in procedural memories. So that's great, Matthew, that you're joining. Sarah asks, is SBSM okay to be doing alongside therapy, mostly talk therapy and learning how to ground so I stop this dissociation and freeze? Yeah, 100%. I would say that what you will notice is that your talk therapy might start to become less needed. And I'm not saying that to not talk therapy, because sometimes it is very important to talk to someone and be connected and resourced with another human being. So 100%. But what you might start to find is that you will learn how to ground and not go into dissociation and freeze via SmartBody SmartMind. The course is designed to teach you how to come out of freeze, how to not go into dissociation in the extreme ways that many people do. So I hope that makes sense. But yes, there's massage, acupuncture, osteo, cranio, having a coach, all of that is fair game when you're in SmartBody SmartMind. The key is that you're applying what you're learning in SBSM to the other thing you're doing. So for instance, let's say you go to your therapist's office and they want you to do something like close your eyes and take a deep breath. And what you will learn in SBSM is that is not useful, especially when we have unhealed trauma. And so at that moment, that's where you have to stand up and say, I don't want to do that. Nope, I'm not closing my eyes and taking a deep breath today. And then that's where that conversation hopefully is a learning experience for both of you, I hope. And it can, shine some light on you setting boundaries, you saying, that doesn't feel good for me. I'd rather just talk and let's just see what happens, for example. Yeah, chronic fatigue syndrome, Chris asks, many of our students have had severe chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, complex PTSD. Please read some of our stories, some of our success stories. Many are in that boat and have healed at very, very deep levels. All right. I'll just wrap up with this question about Feldenkrais. So the Feldenkrais lessons in SmartBody SmartMind, while they are more advanced, we're not putting ourselves into pretzels. So I'm not teaching you guys judo rolls. We're not doing headstands. That is part of the Feldenkrais curriculum. We're not doing that. What we are doing is we're doing very subtle, very gentle movement work in that Feldenkrais domain, but we're blending in the elements of the somatic experiencing world, the early trauma stuff, the principles. So in some ways, you're getting subtlety of the Feldenkraisian lessons, but with added layers of these other forms of work. So yes, it's advanced, but it's not advanced from a physical point of view, if that makes sense. Hey, Kat, I just saw your question come in here. I'm going to see if I can answer this. There we go. So you said regarding high sensitivity, I find it really hard to hear any stories of injuries and surgeries because I feel it as if it's happening to me in the process. Is this related to trauma? I often ask people not to tell me, but sometimes it's unavoidable. 100%. So, just the other day I was listening to a podcast episode and someone said that they were getting a scan taken of their brain just for interest sakes, like for interest. I don't know why. And the podcast host said, oh God, the thought of my head getting scanned to see the kind of injuries in there gives me anxiety because of his history with head injuries and concussions and whiplash and all that kind of stuff. And that's a clear sign that there probably is something old in that person's system that's not healed. It doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with their brain, but there might be old survival energy in the tissues from unhealed concussions or whiplashes. I know that from personal experience. So, Kat, I don't know if you were here on the call when I was talking about coupling dynamics, and I was using my coffee cup to like show this example of things being glued together in our bodies, kind of at the sensory motor traumatic level. That's kind of what's happening here, where we hear things and it's too much in our system, but it's like the system doesn't know how to be discerning, how to differentiate between that's just a story. I'm just hearing something. That's not happening in my body, but I'm having a reaction. So usually that's a sign that there's something unresolved in the system. Doesn't necessarily mean that you've had a spinal, to go back to this, a spinal tap procedure that you don't know about. It could be something totally else, so something totally different that has nothing to do with the surgical thing, right? It could be something else. So I hope that answers your question. It comes down to, you guys, at the end of the day, being able to discern us from the environment, our present moment from past stuff that we've had that we're still storing. And part of that is getting really deeply connected to our sensations, to our physiology, to our body, to understanding the theory as to how these things work. And then slowly over time, in a committed way, it's like you're creating commitment with yourself to just be an apprentice of your physiology, right? You're basically saying vows to say, I promise, to be with you, to listen to you, to nurture you, to pause when I need to pause, to go when I need to go, to say no, all these things, because chances are from before now or when we were young, those things weren't allowed, right? We weren't taught them. All right, Kat, thank you. Yeah, what you wrote just makes total sense now. You said you're a type 1 diabetic and I'm already dealing with needles into the body on a daily basis. I'm actually glad you shared that because we have got a great story from one of our alum. Sandra, Diana is the name. If you can find Sandra's testimony, she is type 1 diabetic and she has had massive shifts in her need for insulin and her glucose blood glucose levels have improved by doing SmartBody SmartMind with dramatic ways. She still is using insulin, but in a very different way. So be sure to, if we don't get that link up before the chat closes, Kat, send us an email to support and we'll get you that. But it's also on our SmartBody SmartMind website. So I just wanted to throw that in there. Okay, I am officially going to end. It's been a long hour, almost 2 hours of talking on this Saturday. Just a reminder, you guys, SmartBody SmartMind, this is my 12-week online program. It's a group program. We run it live once a year. Registration is open now. It's been open for about 2 weeks now, but today and tomorrow, Sunday, the 6th of March, is the final day to register. If you are here listening to this and you're feeling a little bit of a, I think I need to maybe do this, or I need to ask another question, or I haven't gone to the site yet, I better do that right now. Really follow that that impulse. Follow that desire to learn more, to do this work. As I said, this is a lifestyle. The tuition, the fee of investment gets you in for life. We have members that have been back with us years upon years. This is the 11th time we have run SmartBody SmartMind. The curriculum works. When you do the work, it doesn't replace medicine. It doesn't replace seeing a chiropractor if you might need to, but it's an adjunct. It's a complementary way to really get into your physiology and just be super duper healthy at the nervous system level. So I'm going to end it there. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Diana, for putting in all the links over the last almost 2 hours. I'll be doing another Q&A tomorrow at 12 p.m. Pacific time. So if you have a follow-up question, if you're still not sure about something, send us an email. We might be able to answer that via email tonight, tomorrow morning, but we can also answer it here live tomorrow. Be sure to go over to the site. There's an FAQ page with, I think now we have 19 questions there that are frequently asked questions. So be sure to check that out because your question might be there with an answer. And that's it for today. Talk to you all hopefully in SmartBody SmartMind and through the many videos and feeds that are on this channel. All right, everyone. Ciao, ciao.